Have you ever felt as if life is moving around you, yet you remain trapped inside a familiar loop, repeating the same mistakes, chasing the same desires, yet never feeling truly alive? Most people assume that awareness, clarity, or even enlightenment comes from acquiring more knowledge, more experiences, more possessions. They look outward, searching for answers in the world, believing that life will finally make sense when they reach the next milestone or acquire the next achievement. But the truth is the opposite. The awakening you seek does not come from accumulation. It comes from shedding, letting go, and daring to confront the parts of yourself you've long ignored. What if I told you that the struggles you've faced, the confusion that clouds your mind, and the fears that hold you back are not signs of failure, but invitations? Invitations to step into a process, a journey of 7 stages that will challenge, unsettle, and ultimately transform you. Each stage is not a simple lesson, but a mirror, reflecting who you are and who you could become if you dare to confront the truth of your own existence. And while it is not easy, and while many will turn away before completing even the first stage, those who persist discover a freedom that cannot be explained, only experienced. Today, we will explore these 7 stages, not as abstract concepts, but as living, breathing paths that have guided countless souls toward awakening. By the end of this reflection, you may see your own life in a radically different light, your anxieties, failures, and desires transformed into signposts pointing toward a deeper, enduring freedom. Before we dive in, consider subscribing, sharing this reflection, and leaving a comment about what stage you suspect you may be facing first, because the conversation itself is part of the awakening, and in sharing, you help others begin their journey as well. The first stage of awakening begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. It is a subtle stirring inside, a faint recognition that something in your life does not fit, that the routines and certainties you have clung to are not enough. Perhaps you have felt it in moments of sudden clarity, when the world seemed unreal, and yet your mind was fully awake. Most people dismiss these experiences as fleeting, inconsequential, or even unsettling. They tell themselves, it's just a phase, or I must be imagining things. But in truth, this first stage is the doorway to all transformation. It asks you to pay attention, to observe your life with a new kind of perception, not to judge, not to label, but simply to notice. Awareness is not an achievement. It is an acceptance of what is already present, a conscious turning of your gaze inward, even when it is uncomfortable. It requires humility, for in this stage you will see your own patterns, your attachments, and your fears with startling clarity. You may notice how often you are driven by desires that do not serve you, or how many moments you have allowed anxiety and doubt to dictate your actions. This is not meant to induce shame, but to awaken recognition, the profound understanding that before any change can occur, you must first see the terrain of your own mind. Awareness is also the stage where illusions begin to fall away. The things you believed defined your worth, status, possessions, approval from others, start to feel hollow. The world around you remains the same, yet your perception of it shifts. You notice the subtle dissonance between reality and expectation. This is where most people stop, for recognition can be terrifying. To truly awaken, you must allow yourself to feel the disquiet and let it guide you. It is an invitation to confront the self you have carried unexamined for so long, and yet, as frightening as this stage may feel, it carries the first taste of freedom. The awareness that you are not completely at the mercy of your habits, your fears, or your past. You begin to glimpse that life is not merely something that happens to you, but a field in which you can participate consciously, even amidst chaos. Pay attention to these stirrings, for they are the whispers of your soul calling you toward transformation. You may find that certain relationships, beliefs, or routines no longer satisfy you, that you are drawn to experiences that expand your understanding. Resist the urge to cling to comfort. This stage demands curiosity over certainty. Allow yourself to observe without judgment and notice how the simplest moments, a walk through nature, a quiet morning, a conversation with someone fully present, carry a new weight of significance. Awareness is not something you achieve once. It is a continuous practice. In this stage, you begin to see the threads connecting your inner life to the world around you. You recognize the ways in which your mind has created illusions of separation, scarcity, and limitation. And though you may not yet know what lies ahead, the very act of noticing opens the possibility of change. The first stage is a mirror reflecting your potential and your fear simultaneously. It asks nothing more than your attention, your honesty, and a willingness to face the discomfort that accompanies clarity. As you walk through this stage, you begin to understand that life itself is both teacher and test, that each experience is a reflection of your own consciousness. And in that recognition, the seeds of transformation are planted. Once awareness has opened the first door, the second stage asks you to confront the attachments that have quietly shaped your life. These attachments are rarely obvious at first glance. They hide in the routines you defend, in the possessions you prize, in the relationships you cling to, and even in the beliefs you repeat without questioning. At first, the idea of letting go can feel threatening. After all, attachments give a sense of continuity, security, and identity. They may have comforted you in times of uncertainty, yet in truth, they have also restrained you, quietly dictating your choices and limiting your freedom. In this stage, you begin to notice how deeply your sense of self is intertwined with these external anchors. Perhaps you have measured your worth by achievements, by recognition, or by the validation of others. Perhaps you have stayed in relationships that no longer nurture you out of fear, habit, or a sense of obligation. Each attachment is a thread that tethers you to expectations, fears, and illusions. To awaken, you must observe them with honesty. It is not a call to rejection, but a call to understanding. You see how dependency on external circumstances distorts your perception and feeds suffering, even when everything seems fine. As you examine these attachments, you may feel a subtle grief or anxiety. This is natural. To release what you have clung to feels like loss because it challenges everything you believe to be stable. But this is the paradox of awakening. In letting go, you gain. Each expectation relinquished, each habitual grasp softened, opens space for clarity, for intuition, and for a direct experience of life unmediated by fear or desire. You begin to understand that true freedom is not about acquiring more, but about removing the barriers that prevent you from seeing life as it is. The dissolution of attachments also demands courage. It asks you to sit with uncertainty, to resist the urge to control outcomes, and to endure the discomfort of impermanence. You notice the transient nature of pleasure, success, and even personal identity. The realization that everything is fleeting can be unsettling, but it is precisely in this surrender that a deeper serenity emerges. Life is no longer a struggle to hold on. It becomes a flowing experience in which you participate consciously, free from the compulsions of old attachments. In this stage, relationships, possessions, and desires begin to shift naturally. Some fade without effort, some transform in unexpected ways, and some remain but are no longer the source of your identity. Your mind feels lighter, your attention sharper, and your actions less burdened by unconscious fear. This stage is not about perfection, it is about presence. Each act of letting go is a small but profound declaration of trust in life itself, a recognition that the world does not need to conform to your expectations for you to be at peace. Ultimately, the dissolution of attachments is a deeply intimate process. It is the recognition that your sense of self is not defined by what you possess or what others think of you. It is a journey of uncovering the essence of your being beneath layers of habit, desire, and fear. As you release, you make room for life in its raw, unfiltered form, and for the awakening to proceed. This stage is ongoing, a rhythm of surrender and discovery, in which each release reveals more of your true potential and opens a path toward freedom that has always been present, quietly waiting for your courage. As you move beyond attachments, the next stage of awakening turns inward toward the parts of yourself you have long avoided. This is the stage of confronting the shadow, the collection of fears, insecurities, and unresolved emotions that you have buried or denied. Most people spend their lives avoiding these aspects, dressing them with rationalizations or distractions, pretending they do not exist. Yet the shadow is never truly gone. It quietly influences your thoughts, your choices, and the way you perceive the world. Awakening demands that you face it, not with judgment or shame, but with honest observation and a willingness to understand. At first, this confrontation can feel overwhelming. The shadow may appear as anger, jealousy, guilt, or anxiety. It may manifest in recurring patterns of failure or self-sabotage. You might notice the ways you project your fears onto others, blaming them for the discomforts that originate within. In this stage, the challenge is to acknowledge these elements without flinching, to see them as reflections of your own mind rather than as enemies to be fought or removed. The courage required here is immense, for it asks you to be entirely present with your own imperfections, to recognize the parts of yourself you have hidden even from those closest to you. Confronting the shadow also reveals hidden potential. The qualities you have suppressed, creativity, assertiveness, compassion, even courage, often reside alongside the fears you dread. In acknowledging your darkness, you simultaneously reclaim these dormant strengths. The process is not instantaneous. It unfolds gradually, in moments of self-reflection, in interactions that trigger old wounds, and in the quiet hours when you sit alone with your thoughts. Each encounter with your shadow offers insight, a chance to understand why you cling, why you resist, and why you repeat certain patterns. This stage often brings discomfort, even pain, as suppressed memories and emotions rise to the surface. You may feel vulnerable or exposed, as if the facade you have maintained for years is crumbling. Yet this vulnerability is essential. Without it, transformation is superficial. By sitting with the shadow, observing it, and integrating its lessons, you begin to dissolve the illusions that have limited your perception. Life becomes less about defending yourself and more about understanding yourself, less about avoidance and more about conscious engagement. In confronting the shadow, you also begin to perceive the subtle ways in which society, upbringing, and culture have shaped your fears and desires. You see that many of your insecurities are not inherent, but inherited, absorbed from others' expectations and judgments. Recognizing this allows you to disentangle your authentic self from imposed identities. This stage is both liberating and humbling, for it exposes the raw complexity of your psyche and reveals that true awakening requires radical honesty with yourself. Ultimately, the confrontation with your shadow is an act of profound self-compassion. It is an acknowledgement that all aspects of yourself, light and dark, are worthy of attention and understanding. Each insight gained, each fear faced, becomes a stepping stone toward integration, toward a fuller and freer expression of being. By embracing the shadow rather than fleeing from it, you begin to dissolve the internal barriers that have prevented true awakening. You learn that the darkness you feared is, paradoxically, a doorway to clarity, a guide pointing you toward the depths of your own consciousness and the expansive freedom that lies beyond judgment and illusion. Once the shadow has been faced, the awakening moves into a stage that challenges the very notion of control. For much of life, you have believed that mastery comes from manipulation, of circumstances, of others, of outcomes. You have strived to hold the reins tightly, arranging events to fit your expectations, insisting on certainty in a world that is fundamentally uncertain. But awakening reveals the limits of control, and this stage asks you to surrender, not in defeat, but in understanding. It is a conscious recognition that life flows through you rather than being something you dominate. Surrendering control does not mean passivity or weakness. It is not resignation to circumstances, nor is it abandoning responsibility. Instead, it is the art of aligning with the rhythms of life, of participating fully while letting go of the compulsion to dictate every detail. You begin to notice the subtle resistance in your mind whenever outcomes are unpredictable, when plans falter, or when events refuse to conform to your desires. These moments, previously sources of frustration or anxiety, become opportunities to practice letting go, to witness the unfolding of life with openness and trust. In this stage, fear often surfaces, fear of vulnerability, fear of failure, fear that letting go equates to loss. Yet these fears are themselves illusions, projections of a mind accustomed to clinging. Surrender requires patience and repeated practice. You learn to act decisively where needed, yet release attachment to the fruits of your actions. You discover a paradox. The more you release the illusion of control, the more capable you become of navigating life with clarity, creativity, and responsiveness. The flow of existence reveals patterns and opportunities that rigid striving would have obscured. Surrendering control also reshapes your relationships, for you no longer seek to dominate or manipulate others to fit your narrative. Interactions become more authentic, more present, less burdened by expectation. You notice how often your dissatisfaction arose not from circumstances themselves, but from your insistence that the world bend to your desires. By relaxing this grip, you experience a surprising sense of freedom and ease, as if the tension that once constrained your life begins to dissolve. This stage invites deep trust, not blind faith, but a recognition that the universe has an intelligence and rhythm beyond your immediate comprehension. By engaging fully with the present moment, attending to what is here rather than what you wish it to be, you open yourself to a life of spontaneity and creativity. You begin to see that control was never the path to fulfillment. It was a mask, concealing the natural flow of awareness and the richness of existence itself. Ultimately, surrendering control is an act of courage and humility. It is the acknowledgement that life is neither a puzzle to solve nor a series of obstacles to overcome, but a living, unfolding mystery in which you are both participant and observer. The more you release the illusion of control, the more expansive your consciousness becomes, the more attuned you are to the subtle currents of life, and the more you discover that freedom, vitality, and peace have always been present, waiting for the moment when you dared to let go. After surrendering control, the awakening moves toward a profound recognition of connection, the realization that the boundaries you once believed to separate you from the world are, in truth, permeable and often illusory. In this stage, the sense of separateness that has guided much of your thinking, I versus them, self versus other, begins to dissolve. You notice how your actions ripple through life, how the lives of others intersect with your own, and how the currents of existence carry everyone in a shared rhythm. This is not merely an intellectual insight, but an experiential understanding, a felt knowing that your consciousness is entwined with the greater whole. Embracing unity does not mean losing individuality or giving up your unique voice. On the contrary, it deepens it. You begin to see your gifts, choices, and presence as integral threads in a vast tapestry, each contributing to the harmony of the larger pattern. The trivial conflicts, the petty competitions, the incessant comparisons that once consumed you lose their grip. You observe life with a quiet reverence, recognizing that the apparent separations between people, events, and even ideas are temporary constructs, useful for navigation but not ultimate truth. In their place emerges a sense of participation, a knowing that you are both a distinct self and part of an interconnected whole. This stage also brings a profound compassion, not sentimental or forced, but natural and spontaneous. Seeing unity, you recognize the struggles, fears, and joys of others as reflections of your own experience. You begin to understand that harm done to another diminishes no one but affects everyone, just as acts of kindness resonate beyond their immediate scope. In this recognition, moral clarity emerges organically. Ethical choices are no longer obligations imposed externally, but expressions of an inner alignment with life's interconnected flow. Unity, however, is not a static state. It is a dynamic awareness, a continuous noticing of the links between self and world. You may encounter moments when ego-driven thoughts resurface, reminding you of old separations. In these moments, the practice is to observe without judgment and gently return to the understanding of interconnectedness. The more you cultivate this awareness, the more your experience of life becomes fluid, intuitive, and harmonized. You notice patterns, synchronicities, and relationships that previously went unseen. The world appears more vivid, more alive, more responsive, because you are no longer pushing against it, but moving with it. This stage also transforms your sense of fear and desire. When unity is embraced, the anxieties rooted in isolation lose their power, and desires fueled by scarcity or competition soften. You realize that the fulfillment you seek is not a solitary acquisition, but a resonance with the larger whole. Every breath, every gesture, every encounter becomes an opportunity to participate consciously in life's unfolding, and the sense of alienation that once seemed permanent gradually fades. Ultimately, embracing unity is both liberating and grounding. It dissolves the illusion of separation, yet simultaneously roots you more fully in your authentic self. It is the recognition that life is not a collection of isolated moments, but a continuous, interconnected flow in which you are both observer and actor. In this stage, joy, presence, and clarity are no longer fleeting rewards, but natural states emerging from alignment with the whole. And the awakening deepens into a lived experience of harmony and belonging that touches every aspect of your being. In this stage, the awakening crystallizes into an active presence, with awareness, release of attachments, confrontation of the shadow, surrender of control, and recognition of unity. Clarity begins to emerge naturally. You start to see what matters and what does not. Decisions are guided less by fear or desire and more by an intuitive understanding of life's currents. Every choice becomes deliberate, informed by the insight that your actions ripple beyond yourself. Purpose is no longer a rigid plan or a distant goal. It flows from your understanding of the world and your place within it. You discover what brings genuine fulfillment, not the fleeting satisfactions of ego-driven pursuits. This stage invites you to align your daily actions with this deeper clarity, to live intentionally, and to act from a place of authenticity rather than obligation. You may notice a remarkable ease in this stage. Tasks that once felt burdensome now have a natural rhythm. Relationships that once required constant effort now align with mutual understanding. You navigate life with both attentiveness and lightness, aware of impermanence, yet fully present. Each day is an opportunity to express your true self, guided by clarity and purpose that no external force can dictate. The final stage is the culmination of the journey, where the insights of the previous 6 stages converge into a lived reality. You no longer separate yourself from life's flow, nor are you bound by fear, attachment, or illusion. Each moment is embraced fully, without resistance or expectation. You move through the world with ease, presence, and an understanding that true freedom is found not in control or acquisition, but in conscious participation. Transformation at this stage is holistic. Your mind, body, and spirit begin to resonate with a clarity and vitality previously unknown. Challenges are met with equanimity, and even suffering becomes a teacher rather than a tormentor. You recognize that awakening is not a destination, but an ongoing process, a dynamic dance with life itself. In this stage, your life becomes a reflection of the awakening within. Your actions ripple outward, inspiring those around you without intention or effort. You experience a profound sense of alignment where purpose, joy, and presence are inseparable. The self you once clung to is no longer a source of limitation, but a vessel through which life expresses its depth and beauty. Here the journey completes itself not by finishing, but by revealing that awakening was present all along. Every stage, awareness, release, shadow work, surrender, unity and clarity, has prepared you to inhabit life fully, consciously, and freely. Transformation is not something added to you. It is the uncovering of the life that was always yours to live. Having traversed the 7 stages, you arrive at a place of profound insight. Life is not something to be conquered, controlled, or measured by external markers, but something to be experienced deeply, consciously, and with presence. Awareness, the first stage, showed you the landscape of your own mind. Dissolving attachments revealed the illusions you had clung to for comfort. Confronting the shadow uncovered hidden fears and untapped potential. Surrendering control allowed you to move with life rather than against it. Embracing unity dissolved the separations that once defined your existence. Living with clarity and purpose brought intention to each moment. And now, complete awakening transforms all of this into a fluid, lived reality where presence, freedom, and understanding are inseparable. The transformation is not theoretical. It manifests in how you perceive, act, and respond. Everyday moments, once overlooked, now carry significance. Relationships, work, and challenges become mirrors of consciousness, opportunities for engagement rather than obstacles to mastery. You no longer seek fulfillment outside yourself because you understand that life itself is the expression of awakening. This realization is both humbling and empowering. It reminds you that you are neither separate from the world nor a passive observer. You are an active participant in the unfolding of reality, capable of responding with clarity, compassion, and creativity. The 7 stages are not steps to be ticked off like a checklist. They are ongoing, overlapping, and cyclical. There will be moments when old fears resurface, attachments return, or the shadow reappears. But with each encounter, you carry the understanding that these are not failures, but invitations to deepen your awakening. You move forward with patience, courage, and trust, knowing that the process itself is the teacher, and that the life you have long sought, vivid, free, and meaningful, is always available to those willing to engage fully. As you reflect on your journey, consider sharing what resonates with you. Write in the comments a brief reflection, a personal insight, or a small intention you are carrying after hearing these stages. Engaging in this act of expression not only reinforces your understanding, but also creates a ripple, inviting others to awaken alongside you. In practicing awareness, surrender, and presence, you contribute to the living stream of consciousness that connects us all. Remember, awakening is not an achievement. It is the uncovering of what has always been there. Each stage, each challenge, each revelation is a doorway to freedom. You are invited to walk through it moment by moment, choice by choice, until life itself becomes the reflection of the awakened mind. And in this journey, transformation is not distant. It is already present, waiting for your willingness to see, feel, and live it fully.